Former Dean of the UP Asian Center, Dr. Henelito Sevilla Jr. Welcome to Storycon. Dr. Sevilla, thanks
Magandang hapon
for...
sa inyong lahat. Kumusta po kayo?
Doctor, thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, Dean.
Magandang hapon po. Kumusta po kayo? Maliwanag po ba? Or
Maliwanag po, maliwanag po.
Parang, oo nga, mukhang paulan din sa
Oo. Actually po, maliwanag lang po kayo. Ang tanong namin kung maliwanag o malabo ba yung nangyari sa Middle East at anong epekto sa atin.
Oo nga, medyo masalimuot. Ano po?
Everybody's on tenterhooks right now kasi yes, of course Iran and Israel have been at it for a week already, pero pumasok ang US over the weekend. So there are a lot of people wondering, among other things, if it will spill over to us in terms of the economy, in terms of international relations, also even in terms of military activity. For example, is it possible that us having EDCA sites here, maging target din tayo, among other things?
So malaki po ang potential na magkakaroon ng problema, no, at magkakaroon ng negative impact nito sa relasyon ng mga bansa, particularly those who are siding with the United States at saka yung nagsaside sa Iran. So that's in the aspect of geopolitics, but beyond this also is the geoeconomic implication of the US unilateral attack doon sa Iran na po. Antabayan po natin kung ano mangyayari, but can speak about the possibility of implications pagdating dito sa aspeto ng ekonomiya at aspeto ng geopolitics.
Mm-hmm. Well, Doc, Dean, we're looking kasi at the Strait of Hormuz kanina. We were looking at the strait and 85% of the oil that passes there goes to Asia. In other words, kung magkaroon ng constriction doon sa supply ng langis na dumadaan doon, tayo talagang tatamaan.
Isa po to ay sa maapektuhan yan sapagkat ang sabi mo nga, binigkas mo kung ano ang percentage na dumadaan sa Strait of Hormuz. Mula sa 6 na littoral states, no, na nakikita natin sa GCC, kasama dyan yung Saudi Arabia, na siya yung pinakamalaking nag-export ng langis. And then we have Iraq, we have Qatar, isa sa mga pangunahing nag-export ng gas, including Iran, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Oman. So simply tayo sa Pilipinas ay nag-import ng langis na ito. Posibleng maapektuhan tayo. But this is not the impact is not just in terms of bilateral, no. Malaki rin po ang negative na magiging impact nito sa mga both consumers at saka sending exporting countries. So isa dito siguro ang pag-uusapan natin kung ito ba ay may impact doon sa pagtaas, no, sa oil price volatility or oil price hike, given that majority of the oil supply, including gas, are actually coming from these 6 littoral countries in the GCC, and it is the Strait of Hormuz ang siyang pinakadinadaanan nito, no, na daluyan ng pagtatransport ng mahalagang commodity na ito.
Pero di ba, Dean, historically ay naisara na rin ito several times dahil nga dito sa conflicts sa Middle East. At parang itong pangyayaring ito ay parang hindi naman nangyari overnight. Makita na natin yung escalation ng Israel sa Gaza, yung escalation ng US sa Yemen, yung escalation ng Israel sa Lebanon, at of course yung intensifying conflict sa Syria nung bumagsak yung Assad regime. So, hindi naman talaga nawala yung tensions at saka conflicts dito sa rehiyon na ito. Ngayon lang ay may scaling up. At itong threat ng Iranian parliament na isara yung Strait of Hormuz is the latest in a long-standing tension dito sa rehiyon na ito. Siguro ang tanong din ay ano yun ay iba ngayon at dun sa nakaraan? Dati kasi naglagay ng mga aquatic mines ang Iran sa Strait of Hormuz, no? It took a long time at millions of dollars para matanggal yon. Ngayon yata ang threat nila ay mga warships mismo ang magsasara. So, anong naiiba ngayon, Dean?
May mga experience po tayo no ng tension in the past na kung saan ang Strait of Hormuz ay exposed dito sa vulnerability na ito no. For example, we can speak about the 1980s the tanker wars no na kung saan lalaban-laban ang Iran at saka yung Iraq no, sa gera na ito. The Iraqi imposed war sa Iran na naglasted for 8 years ano po. So hindi ito something na ngayon lang, no? So in the past mayroon ring mga nangyayaring ganitong ano. But the most important thing I think is who dominate yung pagkokontrol ng Strait of Hormuz na ito at gaano kalawak ang magiging posibleng danger kung ito ay close ng Iran, for example, no? Because this is a strait wherein 33 kilometers lang yata ang pagitan between Oman at saka Iran po. At kung napapansin nyo, gaya ng binanggit mo, ang parliament po ng Iran ay nag-approve na ng closure ng Strait of Hormuz. Pero ang final na magde-decide po dito sa pagko-close na ito ay probably the supreme leaders, no? The supreme leader of Iran na kung saan siya yung pinaka-ultimate, pinaka-supreme na magde-decide whether or not to close the Strait of Hormuz. But beyond this is also for Iran to calculate kung ano ang magiging damage nito sa kanyang ekonomiya. No? In terms of capability, military capability, I'm sure in the past years, pinaghandaan ito ng Iran na i-secure ang kanyang territory against possible attack from potential threats coming from the region. So ito yung mga bagay na pwede nating tingnan. But if I go back to your question, I think ang isa sa mga bago dito is kung gaano kalawak ang posibleng maging implikasyon nito kung ang pagpasok ng Amerika ay rirespondihan ng Iran, no? At madadrag yung ibang mga regional powers as well as international powers dito sa area na ito, given the strategic value attached to the Strait of Hormuz to the world economy.
You're absolutely right, Prof. I think it may drag other superpowers into this conflict, and we're starting to see a little bit of that because the U.S. has called on China to try to talk to Iran, to convince Iran from closing the Strait of Hormuz. Bakit China? Because China is the biggest recipient of Iranian oil. So they are the biggest market for, they could very well do just a bilateral trade deal between themselves. I don't know. But
I think there are two reasons.
But the point there, and China's response, by the way, said they responded to that saying the U.S. has violated Iranian sovereignty and exacerbated tension. So in this picture, medyo magulo na, no? Pero China is also hitting the U.S. So how do you see this playing out?
2 points. Number one is that China is actually benefiting from the Iranian oil. No, I think 90% of Iran export goes to China, and this is in spite of the unilateral sanction of the United States on Iranian oil industry. Second, China is a friend of Iran. No, so these two important considerations need to be reconsidered when we try to analyze why China may get involved into this kind of conflict. No, so and besides, China is also trading with other major littoral states in the GCC region, and it is for China stability is very important. So tama, sinasabi ng China, bakit kami ang kinukonsultan nyo when you were actually attacking Iran, no? When diplomacy could be the alternative, a tool instead of, military action. No? So bakit ngayon pa? No, parang ganun eh.
At saka din, di ba, kailangan natin maunawaan na Iran is a theocratic state na hindi ito yung katulad ng mga ibang mga estado. No, yung politika at saka yung relihiyon ay practically nagsama.
They are one in the same.
Doon sa kanilang estado, practically. No? At ikalawa ay hindi bago itong pag-isolate sa kanila ng Amerika. May global embargo ang Amerika sa Iran. Kaya yung kanilang hirap na nararanasan ngayon ay hindi rin bago. Kaya pag itinulak mo sila sa isang zero-sum game, delikado. Ibig sabihin ng zero-sum game na nothing to lose ang Iran, lalo na nung nilusob sila ng Israel. At ngayon ay tinulungan ng Amerika ang Israel para lusubin sila. No? Kaya yun yung medyo nagbabago in terms of intensity. Dahil yung Iran is also a regional power. May presence sila sa Iraq, may presence sila sa Syria, may presence sila sa Yemen, may presence sila sa Lebanon, may presence sila sa Gaza. So, yung danger of it becoming a regional confrontation ay practically nandun na. Nandun na. Scaling up lang ang mangyayari kung sakali.
Totoo po yan. Kung titingnan natin sa kasaysayan, isa sa mga dahilan kung bakit nagkaroon ng revolution sa Iran in 1979 was because of the experience of the Iranian nation from the Western imperialism. Yun ang sinasabi nila. And there were two important points in history, in the contemporary history na pwede nating isite. One of this was actually the White Revolution and the second one was the Capitulation Bill. Lahat yan ay nagbibigay ng pribilehiyo sa mga Amerikano na nagsiservice doon sa Iran. At ito ang dahilan kung bakit nagkaroon ng Islamic Revolution in 1979, which basically led to the establishment of the Islamic Republic of Iran. So until 40 years now, successful po ang pamamahala ng Islamic Republic ng Iran. It is a legitimate government. It is not a regime that other Western countries called Iran. It is a legitimate government. It has its own political system, functioning political system, which may be different from other governments around the world. So yung sistema ng tinatawag nila Wilayatul Faqih or the role of juries, Islamic juries, yun po ang sistema na nag-guide ng Islamic Republic of Iran through 40 years of its existence. So in short, in the past 40 years, palagi pong nagkaroon ng problema ang Amerika sa Iran. The US government is looking at Iran as a threat, even if hindi naman natin pwedeng, well, that's the perspective and the narrative of the US, but from the Iranian perspective, I didn't understand why the US is calling them as a threat. Probably because Iran is against imperial policy or colonial policy of the US in the Greater Middle East and North African region.
Okay, and on that note, we'll leave the conversation there. Thank you so much for your insights today and for joining Storycon, Dr. Henelito Sevilla Jr. He's the former dean at the UP Asian Center. Thank you, sir.
Salamat, Dean.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Salamat din.